Crack! The sound of a boot cuts through the air. Catherine collapses. The bucket rolls across the marble. Soapy water runs between the golden pillars. Logan Anderson, 22 years old, shakes his $1,000 Italian shoe. Idiot, you almost got my suit dirty. His $50,000 Rolex gleams under the lights. People like you shouldn't be here. Dead silence. 30 witnesses in the most exclusive lobby in downtown Los Angeles. Nobody moves. Logan's friends pull out their phones. They record. They laugh like hyenas. Catherine looks up from the floor, blue uniform soaked, trembling hands picking up rags. In her brown eyes, tears and something inexplicable, a mother's love. "Security!" Logan shouts, snapping his fingers. "Get her out of here! My dad owns this building!" Catherine stands up, straight back, dignity intact. She walks toward the exit without saying a word. What nobody imagines is who this woman humiliated on the marble floor really is. The only person capable of saving his heart, his mother. Subscribe and stay. In 24 hours, this video will shake his world forever. Logan Anderson arrived at his penthouse that night, still laughing about the show in the lobby. His 3 friends followed him, their phones still hot from the recording they had made. "You should have seen her face when she fell," mocked Sebastian, reviewing the video on his screen. "This is pure gold, Logan." "Upload it to TikTok," said Logan, uncorking a $500 bottle of champagne. "People need to see what happens when you don't respect the Andersons." While they toasted on the terrace overlooking all of Los Angeles, none of them imagined they had just lit the fuse of a digital bomb. At 11:47 p.m., the video had 50,000 views. Logan barely noticed between toasts and laughter. At 2:15 a.m., when he finally checked his phone before going to sleep, the number had escalated to 300,000. The smile vanished from his face. When he woke up at 11:30 the next day, his world had changed forever. 2.5 million views, 15,000 comments, 8,000 shares, and climbing like a rocket. "Heartless millionaire humiliates worker," read the title someone had put on the video. The comments were an avalanche of outrage. "This is what's wrong with the world. Someone identify this guy, please. My mother cleans offices. This breaks my heart. How can such cruel people exist?" Logan read the first comments with annoyance, then with concern, and finally with pure panic. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. His other friends were sending him screenshots. The video was on all social media platforms. But the call that terrified him most was from his father. "Come to my office, now!" Richard Anderson's voice sounded like broken ice. "And Logan, bring a very good explanation for the stupidity your friends uploaded to the internet." The trip to the corporate building of Anderson Holdings was the longest of his life. The streets of Los Angeles seemed to watch him with reproach. Every traffic light was an eternity. Every casual glance felt like an accusation. Upon arriving at the building, Logan noticed something strange. The employees looked at him differently, some with open contempt, others with a mixture of pity and disgust that was worse than hatred. The receptionist, Maria Elena, who had always greeted him with a servile smile, this time didn't even look up. "Your father is waiting for you on the 40th floor, she murmured without lifting her eyes from the computer. In the elevator, Logan saw himself reflected in the metal doors. For the first time in his life, he didn't like what he saw. The arrogant young man in the mirror seemed like an unpleasant stranger. Richard Anderson was standing with his back turned, looking through the panoramic window that offered a view of all Los Angeles. At 55 years old, he was still an imposing man, but there was something different in the tension of his shoulders. "Do you know how many calls I've received in the last 2 hours?" he asked without turning around. "Dad, 37. Richard turned slowly. 37 important clients threatening to cancel contracts. The janitors' union calling for a strike. 3 public relations firms telling me our case is toxic." Logan swallowed hard. He had never seen his father like this. "In 30 years building this empire, I had never seen such a fast and destructive crisis. Richard walked toward his desk. And all because of 3 minutes of your stupidity recorded by your little friends. The phone rang. Richard answered on speakerphone. Mr. Anderson, this is Claudia Morales from Human Resources. We have a critical situation. In the last 4 hours, 18 workers from the cleaning area have resigned. They say they can't work for a company that allows their colleagues to be treated like this. Logan sank into his chair. This was worse than he had imagined. Furthermore, continued the voice on the phone, we have reporters waiting in the lobby, Channel 7, Channel 13, and 2 national newspapers. Richard hung up and looked at his son with a mixture of disappointment and something Logan had never seen. Fear. Do you understand what you've done? You didn't just humiliate an innocent worker. You've put the jobs of 3,000 employees at risk. You've stained a surname that took me decades to build. Logan tried to speak, but the words got stuck in his throat. At that moment, Richard's secretary knocked on the door. Mr. Anderson, there's a lawyer here. He says he represents the woman from the video. He wants to speak with you. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard and Logan looked at each other. For the first time in the young man's life, he saw real fear in his father's eyes. Have him come in, whispered Richard. What neither of them knew was that this lawyer brought more than just a lawsuit in his briefcase. He brought the truth that was going to destroy everything Logan thought he knew about his own identity. Dr. Stephen Blackwell was 45 years old and had a reputation that preceded his entrance into any room. A specialist in labor rights, he had won impossible cases against the most powerful corporations in the country. His dark gray suit was modest, but his presence filled the space like smoke. He entered with firm steps, shook hands with a grip that was more of a warning than a courtesy, and placed his worn leather briefcase on the most expensive conference table in the city. Gentleman Anderson. His voice was calm, but there was steel in every word. I represent Mrs. Catherine Wilson, the victim of the assault. Logan felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Dr. Blackwell, Richard maintained composure. I understand your position, but I'm sure we can reach a reasonable settlement. If your client suffered damages, it's not about money. The lawyer opened his briefcase with the precision of a surgeon. My client doesn't want your money, Mr. Anderson. Richard and Logan exchanged confused looks. Then what does she want? Asked Logan, finally finding his voice. Dr. Blackwell took out a tablet and slid it across the table. On the screen, the video statistics were apocalyptic. 4.2 million views, 67,000 comments, #1 trending in the country. What my client wants is real justice, not a check that allows this to happen again. Justice that educates, that transforms, that demonstrates that actions have real consequences. Speak clearly, growled Richard. The lawyer smiled for the first time, but it wasn't a pleasant smile. Logan Anderson will work 6 months as a cleaning employee in this same company. Minimum wage, full-time, no special privileges, no family protection. The silence that followed was so dense it could be chewed. Logan jumped from his chair. You're crazy. I'm not going to... If you reject the proposal, continued Blackwell, ignoring him completely, we will proceed with a civil lawsuit for damages of $15 million, plus a criminal lawsuit for physical assault. With the video as evidence and the media repercussion, I guarantee we will win both cases. Richard was calculating rapidly in his head. A lawsuit of that magnitude, with the current scandal, could bankrupt several divisions of the company. Furthermore, continued the lawyer, my client has received offers from 4 television programs to tell her story. Imagine the additional damage to your reputation. Logan was red with fury. You can't force me to work like a human being who earns an honest living? The lawyer's voice cut like a razor. Your father built his empire thanks to the work of people like my client. Maybe it's time for you to learn that value." Richard put a hand on his son's shoulder to calm him. "Doctor, your proposal is unconventional. Desperate times require desperate measures, Mr. Anderson. Your son behaved like a medieval tyrant. Modern justice requires him to learn medieval humility." The lawyer closed his briefcase and stood up. "You have 48 hours to decide. If you accept, Logan will start Monday at 6 a.m. If you refuse, we'll see you in court." He walked toward the door, but stopped without turning around. "Oh, one more thing. If Logan abandons the job before completing the 6 months, or if you try to make life easy for him in any way, the agreement is automatically voided, and we will proceed with the full lawsuits." The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a hammer blow. Logan and Richard remained silent for 5 eternal minutes. Finally, Logan exploded. "Dad, you can't be seriously considering this. I'm Logan Anderson. I can't clean bathrooms like an honest worker?" Richard's voice was colder than Logan had ever heard it. "Maybe that's exactly what you need to learn." Logan looked at his father as if he were a stranger. "Are you telling me you're going to allow this?" Richard approached the window. The city extended beneath his feet, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel like the king of anything. "Logan, in 48 hours, that woman could destroy everything I've built. Everything you're going to inherit." He turned toward his son. "If working 6 months saves you from $15 million in lawsuits and gives us back some public credibility, maybe it's the best deal we've ever made." Logan collapsed in the chair. His perfect world was crumbling like a sandcastle. But what neither of them knew was that Dr. Blackwell had omitted the most important detail of all: the real identity of Catherine Wilson. A truth that was about to change not only Logan's future, but his entire understanding of the past. Monday, 5:45 a.m. Logan Anderson was standing in front of his father's building, but this time he wasn't going to the executive floors. This time, he took the service elevator to the basement. He had spent the weekend in shock, alternating between denial and rage. His friends had sent him supportive messages that sounded more like condolences. His Instagram, once full of photos on yachts and exclusive parties, now had comments disabled. The blue uniform felt strange on him. The cheap fabric scratched against his skin, accustomed to Egyptian cotton. The rubber boots were 2 sizes bigger than his custom-made Italian shoes. In the basement locker room, other cleaning employees prepared for the day. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with barely concealed contempt. Everyone knew who he was. "So you're the famous Logan Anderson." A woman of about 40 approached. Her name tag read, "Rosa Martinez, Supervisor. I'm going to be your boss for the next 6 months." Logan looked her up and down. 3 days ago, this woman wouldn't have been worthy of his glance. "I hope you don't expect any special treatment," Rosa continued. "Here we all work the same. We arrive early, work hard, and respect each other, something that, from what I've seen in the video, you don't know how to do." Logan felt blood rushing to his head. "Look, you nothing." Rosa put a bucket and a mop in his hands. "Your first job is the bathrooms on the 15th floor. There are 20 bathrooms, and I want them spotless by 8 a.m. The weight of the bucket surprised him. He had never carried anything so heavy in his life. "Aren't there carts or something?" Rosa smiled cruelly. "Carts are for experienced employees. You've been on the job for 3 days. You'll earn them." The trip to the 15th floor was a humiliation. Executives who used to greet him with reverence now looked at him with a mixture of amusement and contempt. Some took out their phones to take pictures. The first bathroom was torture. Logan had never cleaned anything in his life. The chemicals irritated his skin. The smell made him nauseous, and his back started hurting after the first hour. By 10 a.m., he had cleaned only 4 bathrooms. Rosa appeared to inspect his work. "This is dirty." She pointed to a stain Logan had overlooked. And this. Do it again." Logan was about to explode when he saw a group of employees watching from a distance. He recognized the faces. They were managers from different departments, and they were laughing. "See the boss's son?" whispered one. "I think he's going to cry." "Finally learning what real work is," replied another. The humiliation was complete. At 12:30, Logan was exhausted. He had cleaned 8 bathrooms, but Rosa had rejected 3. His hands were cracked, his back was a mass of pain, and he was hungry in a way he had never experienced. He headed to the executive cafeteria on the 30th floor, but the security guard stopped him. "Sorry, Mr. Logan, but cleaning employees eat in the basement cafeteria." Logan wanted to scream that he was Logan Anderson, the owner's son, but the words got stuck in his throat. In the basement cafeteria, he bought a ham sandwich and watery coffee with the $5 Rosa had given him as a lunch advance. The food tasted like cardboard. He sat alone at a corner table, trying to ignore the stares and whispers. That's when he saw her. Catherine Wilson was in the lunch line, paying for a plate of rice with chicken that cost $3. Her blue uniform was identical to Logan's, but she wore it with a dignity he couldn't understand. Their eyes met for a second. Logan expected to see triumph, satisfaction, revenge, but what he saw completely puzzled him. Compassion. Catherine walked toward him and, without saying a word, placed a pair of newer rubber gloves on his table. "The chemicals are hard on new hands," she said with a soft voice. "These will protect you better." Before Logan could respond, she had already walked away. Logan stared at the gloves. They were cheap, probably had cost Catherine a significant part of her daily salary. Why would someone he had publicly humiliated be helping him? When he finished his sandwich, something fell from the bag Catherine had left on a nearby table. A cloth handkerchief, old but carefully maintained. In one corner, embroidered with faded blue thread, was the letter L. Logan picked it up, confused. Why would a cleaner have a handkerchief with his initial? When he looked up to return it, Catherine was already gone. But the handkerchief in his hand felt strangely familiar, as if he had seen it before in dreams he couldn't remember. What Logan didn't know was that this handkerchief had accompanied him every night during his first 3 years of life. What he didn't know was that those hands that had just shown him kindness were the same ones that had rocked him to sleep when he was a baby. And what he never could have imagined was that this woman he had treated with such cruelty had cried every night for 19 years, wondering if her son was okay. 3 weeks had passed since the first day. Logan had learned to clean bathrooms, to mop floors, to empty trash cans, and to endure the constant pain in his back. But above all, he had learned to be invisible. The executives no longer laughed openly at him. It was worse. They ignored him completely, as if he were part of the furniture. Logan was beginning to understand what it meant to not exist to the world, but something had changed in him. That Thursday, while cleaning the conference room on the 20th floor, he heard a conversation that made him stop. Fire the new girl. It was the voice of Robert Salinas, marketing manager. "She's too slow and has a provincial accent. We don't look good with people like that serving our clients." Logan looked toward the table. They were talking about Patricia, a 19-year-old girl who had started working in reception the week before. She came from a small town, worked during the day and studied at night to support her sick mother. 2 months ago, Logan would have agreed with Salinas, but now... "Excuse me?" Logan left the cloth and approached the table. The 4 executives looked at him with surprise. "Does the cleaning staff now interrupt private meetings?" asked Salinas with contempt. "Patricia is the most punctual employee we have." Logan felt his heart beating rapidly. "She arrives half an hour before everyone, stays until her replacement arrives, and has never complained about working weekends." "And what would you know about work, rich boy?" Salinas stood up. "Go clean, and don't interfere where you're not called." Before, Logan would have exploded with rage. But these 3 weeks had taught him something new. Dignity doesn't come from your last name, but from your actions. You're going to fire a hard-working girl who supports her sick family because you don't like her accent. Logan looked at each of the men. You know what? You are exactly the kind of people I was 3 weeks ago. The executives remained silent. None expected that kind of response. And you know what else? Continued Logan. I didn't like that person, and I don't like you. Logan picked up his bucket and left the room. His hands were trembling, but for the first time in weeks, he felt like himself. An hour later, Rosa found him in the hallway. Is it true you confronted Salinas? Logan nodded, expecting to be scolded. To his surprise, Rosa smiled. Patricia told me. She says you're the first person in this company who has defended her. Rosa put a hand on his shoulder. Maybe there is hope for you after all. Deal. That afternoon, during lunch, Logan sat for the first time at the table where the other cleaning employees ate. At first, the conversation stopped, but gradually they began to include him. He talked with Michael, who had been cleaning offices for 15 years and had managed to get his 3 children through college. With Hope, who worked 2 jobs to pay for her husband's heart surgery. With Charles, who had lost his business in the crisis, and now, at 55, was starting over without bitterness. Each story was a lesson in resilience that Logan had never considered. Catherine continued to keep her distance, but Logan had begun to observe her. The way she treated each employee with genuine respect. How she always had a word of encouragement for someone going through difficulties. How her eyes lit up when she talked about her son, although Logan had never heard her mention details. One Friday afternoon, while both were cleaning the same floor, Logan finally gathered courage. Catherine, can I ask you something? She stopped, surprised. It was the first time he had spoken to her directly since the incident. Why did you help me the first day? With the gloves, I mean. Catherine continued cleaning, but Logan noticed her movements had become slower, because everyone deserves a chance to learn. But I treated you horribly. I humiliated you in front of everyone. Catherine stopped and looked at him. In her eyes was a depth of pain Logan couldn't understand. Logan, do you have children? No. When you have a child, you love them unconditionally, even when they make mistakes, even when they hurt you. Her voice broke slightly. Especially when they hurt you. Logan felt something strange in his chest, a warmth and pain at the same time. Does your son know how lucky he is to have you as a mother? Catherine smiled, but there were tears in her eyes. My son doesn't know I exist. Before Logan could ask more, Catherine had disappeared down the hallway. That night, Logan stayed awake thinking about the conversation. There was something in the way Catherine had spoken, in the sadness of her voice, in the way she had said, "My son doesn't know I exist," and there was something about that handkerchief embroidered with the L he had found weeks ago. A handkerchief he had kept in his locker and for some reason couldn't throw away. A handkerchief that gave him a feeling of nostalgia he couldn't explain. Logan didn't know that the next day, a meeting was going to reveal the truth that would change everything. A truth that had been hidden for 22 years. A truth that would explain why Catherine Wilson had shown compassion toward the young man who had publicly humiliated her. And a truth that was going to make Logan question everything he thought he knew about his own story. Dr. Blackwell had requested an urgent meeting for Friday afternoon. Richard and Logan arrived at the lawyer's office with opposite feelings. Richard with hope that the contract could be modified, Logan with the secret desire for it all to end soon. The office was modest but elegant, law books filled the walls, and the smell of old coffee mixed with paper gave it an air of academic seriousness. Gentleman Anderson, thank you for coming. Dr. Blackwell was more serious than usual. We need to talk about some developments in the case. Richard settled into the worn leather chair. Doctor, if your client is willing to renegotiate the terms, it's not about that. The lawyer looked directly at Logan. It's about information that has come to my knowledge and that changes everything. Logan felt a knot in his stomach. My client has decided it's time to reveal certain truths she had kept private until now. The office door opened, and Catherine Wilson entered. She wore a simple but dignified dress, and in her hands she held an old cardboard box. Richard stood up out of courtesy, but Logan remained motionless. There was something different about Catherine, a determination he hadn't seen before. Mr. Anderson, Catherine spoke directly to Richard. 22 years ago, you made me a proposal. Richard frowned, trying to remember. You paid me $100,000 to disappear from my newborn son's life. Her voice was firm, but Logan noticed her hands were trembling. You told me a child needed stability, not a 19-year-old single mother who worked cleaning houses. The silence in the office was so dense, Logan could hear his own heart. You convinced me that the best thing for my baby was to leave him with you and your wife, who could give him everything I never could, an education, opportunities, a future. Logan began to understand, but his mind refused to accept it. I signed papers renouncing all my maternal rights. I agreed never to try to contact him. In exchange, you made sure I would never work in jobs where I might accidentally encounter him. Catherine opened the cardboard box. She took out yellow documents, photos, and small objects. Until 3 months ago, when the cleaning company assigned me to this building. Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in 22 years, I saw my son. Logan stood up so abruptly that the chair fell over. No, it can't be. Catherine took out a photo from the box. It was a hospital photo, a newborn baby with a small identification bracelet. The name on the bracelet said, Logan Wilson. You were 3 years old when Richard finally found a convincing story about your biological mother. He told you she had died in an accident, that she had been a family friend who couldn't take care of you. Logan looked at his father, who had gone completely pale. Is it true? He whispered. Richard didn't respond. Catherine took more objects from the box. The handkerchief embroidered with the L that Logan had found, a yellow baby blanket, a small chain with a St. Christopher medal. I embroidered this handkerchief when you were 6 months old. Her voice broke. The L for Logan. Every night I would sing you a lullaby while I made it. Sleep, my child, sleep, my son. Your mama watches over you with all her love. Logan felt as if the world was crumbling beneath his feet. That melody. He had heard it before, in dreams. In moments of half-consciousness, he had attributed to his imagination. For 22 years, I have worked cleaning offices, houses, hospitals. Catherine continued taking objects from the box, every day thinking about you, wondering if you were okay, if you were happy, if you would ever remember me. She showed a yellowed newspaper clipping. It was from the social section. Logan Anderson, son of businessman Richard Anderson, wins youth swimming competition. I've kept every mention of you in the newspapers, every photo. I've followed your life from a distance like a ghost. Logan collapsed back into the chair. Everything fit together in a horrible and perfect way. The way Catherine had looked at him the day of the incident, the inexplicable compassion, the gloves she had given him, the sadness in her eyes when she talked about her son. And 3 weeks ago, continued Catherine, my own son, the child I carried in my womb for 9 months, kicked me like I was trash. Tears now flowed freely down her face, but her voice remained steady, not because he was cruel by nature, but because no one had ever taught him what respect means, the dignity of work, the value of people who don't have important last names. Logan put his hands on his head. His entire world was a lie. Dad, he looked at Richard. Is it true? Richard finally spoke with a voice that sounded like crumpled paper. "I thought it was best for you. Your mother was very young, without resources, without family to support her. Isabel and I couldn't have children. I thought it was a perfect solution for everyone." "You lied to me for 22 years, Logan shouted. "You told me my mother was dead. If you had known she was alive, you would have wanted to look for her. You would have asked questions. It wasn't best for your emotional stability. My emotional stability, or your comfort." Catherine spoke with a soft voice. "Logan, I didn't come here to destroy your relationship with your father. I came because after seeing you work these weeks, after seeing that you're capable of changing, of learning, of showing compassion, I thought you deserved to know the truth." Logan looked at her. This woman who had cleaned in silence for decades. This woman who had accepted the cruelest agreement imaginable to give him a better life. This woman who, after being publicly humiliated by her own son, had found the strength to forgive and help. "Why?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Why did you forgive me? Why did you help me?" Catherine smiled through her tears. "Because you're my son. Because I loved you from before you were born, and I never stopped loving you. Not even when you kicked me in that lobby. Because a mother's love has no conditions, Logan." Logan approached her slowly. For the first time, he really looked at her. The eyes that were the same color as his, the shape of the nose, the jawline. How had he not seen it before? I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything now." Catherine put the box on the table. "I just wanted you to know that you've always had a mother who loves you, and that the woman you humiliated that day wasn't just any employee. She was someone who would have given her life for you without hesitation." Logan extended his hand toward the embroidered handkerchief. When his fingers touched it, a million emotions hit him like an avalanche. Love, loss, regret, hope. Can you forgive me?" Catherine took her son's hands. They were the hands she had kissed when he was days old, now rough from work, but they were still her child's hands. "I already forgave you, Logan. I forgave you the same day it happened. Because that's what mothers do." Logan collapsed into Catherine's arms. For the first time in 22 years, mother and son embraced. And in that embrace were all the lullabies never sung, all the lost birthdays, all the moments stolen by a decision that had separated what should never have been separated. Richard watched them from his chair, finally understanding the magnitude of the damage he had caused with his good intentions. Dr. Blackwell quietly closed his briefcase. His work was finished. The purest justice doesn't always come from the courts. Sometimes it comes from a mother's forgiveness who never stopped waiting. A week after the revelation, Logan requested a meeting with all company employees. Richard had tried to dissuade him, but Logan was inflexible. It was time to face the consequences of his actions head-on, not from the comfort of an executive office. The main auditorium of Anderson Holdings had never hosted a meeting like this. 300 employees filled the seats, from managers to cleaning staff. Everyone knew something important was about to happen. Logan went up to the podium without a designer suit, without an expensive tie, without the status symbols that once defined his identity. He wore a simple shirt and work pants. In his pocket, the handkerchief embroidered with the L. The silence was absolute. "My name is Logan Anderson, and a month ago I publicly humiliated a worker at this company." His voice resonated clear and firm. "I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to blame my upbringing, my ignorance, or my youth. What I did was cruel, inexcusable, and completely conscious." A murmur ran through the auditorium. "During the last 4 weeks, I have worked as a cleaning employee in this company. I have cleaned the same bathrooms you clean. I have carried the same buckets. I have felt the same tiredness in my back, the same hands cracked by chemicals, the same invisibility you feel when people look at you as if you were part of the furniture." Logan saw Catherine in the third row. She gave him a small gesture of encouragement. But more important than the physical work, I have learned something about value. The real value of people is not in their bank accounts, in their university degrees, or in the last names we carry. It's in the dignity with which they face each day, in the way they treat others, in the resilience they show in the face of difficulties. Michael, the cleaning employee who had managed to educate 3 children, smiled from his seat. I have met people like Michael Torres, who with a minimum wage managed to get his 3 children through college as professionals. Like Hope Rodriguez, who works 2 jobs to pay for her husband's surgery without a single complaint. Like Charles Williams, who at 55 lost his business and started over without bitterness or resentment. The mentioned employees straightened in their seats, surprised to be publicly recognized. But above all, I have learned from Catherine Wilson. Logan paused, breathed deeply. The woman I assaulted is not just an exemplary employee. She is my biological mother. The auditorium exploded in murmurs of amazement. Catherine covered her face with her hands. For 22 years, my father told me my mother had died. The truth is that she sacrificed her right to raise me because she thought I would have a better life. For 22 years, she worked cleaning offices, following my life from a distance, loving me in silence. Tears ran down Logan's cheeks, but his voice didn't break. And I, her own son, kicked her like she was trash. I humiliated her in front of strangers. I treated her with a cruelty that has no name. Logan came down from the podium and walked toward Catherine. He knelt in front of her before all the employees. Mom, in front of all our co-workers, I ask your forgiveness, not only for that day, but for all the days we lost, for all the times I could have known you and didn't, for having been the kind of person who believed his value was above yours. Catherine stood up and helped her son to his feet. I already forgave you, honey. I already forgave you. The embrace they shared resonated in the heart of every person present. Logan returned to the microphone, but this time, Catherine accompanied him. Today, I announce important changes at Anderson Holdings. Effective immediately, all cleaning staff salaries will increase by 40%. A university scholarship program for employees' children will be established. A medical fund for family emergencies will be created. The applause began slowly and grew into an ovation. But more important than money are attitude changes. A mandatory respect protocol will be established. Any employee, regardless of position, who disrespects a colleague will face immediate consequences. This company will be founded on mutual respect, not abusive hierarchies. Richard, who had been watching from the back of the auditorium, approached the podium. I also must ask for forgiveness. His voice was broken. To Catherine, for the selfish decision I made 22 years ago. To my son, for depriving him of knowing his real mother. To all of you, for allowing a culture where this kind of abuse was possible. Father and son embraced. It wasn't just a family reconciliation, it was the end of an era and the beginning of another. Catherine took the microphone for the first time in her life. I don't have a prepared speech. I just want to tell you that forgiveness is not weakness. Forgiveness is the most powerful force that exists, and that we all deserve a second chance to be better than we were yesterday. The ovation that followed lasted 5 full minutes. When the auditorium emptied, Logan and Catherine remained alone on the stage. Do you think it's possible to recover 22 lost years? Asked Logan. Catherine smiled. We can't recover the past, honey, but we can build a future, one day at a time. Logan took the embroidered handkerchief from his pocket. Would you teach me that lullaby you used to sing to me? Catherine began to hum softly. Sleep, my child, sleep, my son. Your mama watches over you with all her love. For the first time in 22 years, Logan heard the complete song, and he knew he had found his way home. 5 years later, the Noble Hands Cafe had become the favorite meeting place for Anderson Holdings employees during lunch breaks. The recycled wooden tables contrasted perfectly with the plants Catherine personally cared for, and the aroma of freshly ground coffee mixed with that of the empanadas she prepared herself every morning. It was a sunny Thursday in April when Logan entered the cafe carrying a leather briefcase and a smile he had learned to be genuine. At 27 years old, he directed the company's social responsibility program, and his initiatives had been recognized nationally. Catherine was behind the counter, adjusting the fresh flowers that always decorated the place. At 53 years old, she was the director of the Hands That Dignify program, an initiative that had helped more than 500 working families access higher education and medical care. "The usual coffee, Director Anderson?" she asked with a mischievous smile. "You know I hate when you call me that, Mom," Logan replied, giving her a kiss on the forehead. They sat at their usual table, next to the window overlooking the park, where Logan had learned to walk when he was little. Catherine had recovered those memories during long nighttime conversations in which they reconstructed piece by piece the story that had been stolen from them. "How did the presentation to the World Foundation go?" asked Catherine while serving coffee in ceramic cups made by local artisans. "They approved the complete project." Logan took out some documents from his briefcase. $50 million to replicate the Hands That Dignify model throughout Latin America. Catherine put her hands to her chest, moved. "Can you imagine? Thousands of working families are going to have the opportunities you and I never had when you were little." Logan took his mother's hand. Now they were soft, cared-for hands, but they retained the strength of decades of honest work. "Mum, there's something else." Logan smiled mysteriously. "The magazine Leaders of Change wants to do a feature story about us. They're going to call it From Humiliation to Transformation, the story of a mother and son who changed a company." Catherine shook her head, as always when Logan proposed public recognition. "Honey, you know I don't like those things." "It's important, Mom. Our story can inspire others. It can demonstrate that forgiveness and real change are possible." While they talked, other employees arrived at the cafe. Michael, now supervisor of the maintenance area, greeted with a smile. His youngest son had just graduated as an engineer on a scholarship from the company program. Hope, who had become the coordinator of the medical fund, approached to tell them that her husband had been discharged after successful surgery. Charles, at 60 years old, directed the job reinsertion program for people over 50 who had lost their jobs. All of them were part of the new culture at Anderson Holdings, a company that had gone from being an example of workplace abuse to a model of social responsibility. "You know what excites me most about all this?" said Catherine, observing her colleagues. "It's not just that we changed our story. It's that we've helped change the story of so many other families." Logan nodded, remembering the words he had learned in those 6 months working as a cleaner. A person's value is not in what they have, but in what they give. From the corner table, a girl of about 8 years old approached shyly. She was the daughter of Patricia, the receptionist Logan had defended years ago and who now studied night administration thanks to a company scholarship. "Mrs. Catherine, can you teach me to make empanadas like you?" asked the girl with bright eyes. Catherine lit up. She got up from the table and took the girl toward the kitchen. "Of course, my love, but first you have to learn the most important secret. You cook with your hands, but you season with your heart." Logan watched them from the table, thinking about how strange and perfect destiny was. 5 years ago, he was an arrogant young man who believed his value was in his last name and bank account. He had humiliated the only person who had loved him unconditionally from the day he was born. Now, seeing Catherine teach a girl the secrets of cooking, he understood that true wealth is not measured in dollars, but in the number of lives you can touch positively. He took out from his wallet a photograph he always carried with him. Catherine and him the day they reunited, embracing in Dr. Blackwell's office, both crying, both healing, both starting over. On the back of the photo, Catherine had written in her careful handwriting, "You didn't just inherit a fortune, honey. You inherited the value of looking every human being in the eyes and seeing in them the dignity they deserve." Logan smiled, put the photo away, and approached the kitchen where Catherine was teaching the girl to knead the dough for empanadas. "Can you teach me too, Mum?" he asked. Catherine handed him an apron. "It's never too late to learn, my love. It's never too late to start over." While mother and son worked side by side in that small kitchen, sharing recipes and laughter, the afternoon sun entered through the window, creating a perfect picture of redemption. Outside, the life of Los Angeles continued its course. But inside the Noble Hands Cafe, in that kitchen full of homemade aromas and recovered love, the most beautiful ending that a story of forgiveness could have was written every day. An ending that wasn't really an ending, but the beginning of a new way of living, of loving and of valuing what really matters in life. Because some stories don't end with, "They lived happily ever after." They end with, "And they chose to be happy every day, one hug at a time." Final message. This story of Logan and Catherine reminds us that forgiveness has the power to transform not only individual lives, but entire communities. That it's never too late to recognize our mistakes, ask for sincere forgiveness, and start over. Tell us, from which country are you watching us? Have you lived any experience of forgiveness that changed your life? Do you know someone like Catherine, who loves unconditionally despite the pain? Subscribe to our channel for more stories of second chances, of poetic justice, and of those moments that remind us that human goodness can always triumph over cruelty. Because we all deserve a second chance, and we all have the power to give it.